The crowd wasn't loud. That was the first sign something had changed. Cassius stood in the center of the Miami Beach ring, hand raised, sweat cooling on his shoulders, and heard polite applause. Scattered, thin. He'd won 6 straight rounds, and nobody was talking about it. His opponent sat slumped in the opposite corner, unmarked but finished. Cassius had controlled every exchange, maintained distance, worked behind the jab, made the man miss, won the round, repeated, clean work, professional work, the kind that doesn't sell tickets. The referee released his wrist and stepped back. Cassius lowered his arm slowly. The arena lights felt hotter than the fight had been. In the locker room, Angelo Dundee unwrapped the hand tape without speaking. The silence stretched long enough to feel intentional. Cassius waited. Finally, Dundee said it. "That's what it looks like." 3 words. No congratulations. No analysis of what went right. Just confirmation that this was the work now. Cassius flexed his fingers. The knuckles were pink but smooth. He hadn't thrown the kind of punches that left damage on both sides. That was the point, he was learning. Survive the round. Win the round. Don't give them anything to use against you later. Miami Beach in 1961 operated on different rules than Louisville. The Fifth Street gym wasn't loud. Fighters moved through their work with the quiet focus of men who understood that noise didn't pay rent. Cassius had arrived with speed and an Olympic medal, expecting that combination to be enough. It wasn't. Every professional in the gym could see what he couldn't yet admit. Speed without structure was just motion. Flash without foundation collapsed. They didn't tell him this directly. They just watched, waited to see if he'd figure it out. The fights came regularly now. Small shows, local cards, opponents whose names appeared in tiny print on posters that would be torn down by morning. But each fight revealed something new. Cassius learned he could control distance better than he knew. That a jab didn't need power if it landed first. That winning 30 seconds at the end of a round mattered more than winning the middle. These weren't Olympic lessons. This was different mathematics, points accumulated, rounds banked, small victories that added up to something larger he couldn't see yet. The third fight after Miami tested something deeper. His opponent was older, heavier, with scar tissue around both eyes. In the second round, the man's guard dropped. The opening was there, perfect for the kind of combination that would end things. Then Dundee's voice cut through. "Box him. Stay long." Cassius pulled back, let the moment pass, won the round on points, won the next 4 the same way. After, in the locker room, Dundee's hand rested on his shoulder 3 seconds longer than usual. That was the conversation. Each morning at the Fifth Street gym, Cassius would arrive before the heat settled in. Other fighters would already be there, working with methodical rhythm. Nobody rushed, nobody performed. This was construction work, not demonstration. His shadow boxing became tighter, more economical. He started seeing mistakes in his own movement, a wasted step, an extra motion before the jab, details so small they seemed meaningless. But in the ring, those half inches became openings. He fixed them one at a time, in silence. Dundee's voice between rounds was the strangest adjustment. Other corners were frantic, shouting, pleading, demanding. Dundee would lean close, speak barely above a whisper, and every word would land. He drops his right when he's tired. Take a step left after the jab. Win this round, forget the finish. Cassius found himself waiting for those words more than the bell. They became the center of everything. The crowd disappeared. The opponent's corner faded. There was only Dundee's next instruction. The next small correction that would win the next 3 minutes. The press started changing their language. Cassius noticed it in the back pages, the small columns that covered local boxing. Fast still appeared, but reckless was gone. Nobody called him awkward anymore. Instead, difficult to hit, effective, a prospect worth tracking. He wasn't a headline, wasn't a story. He was a name moving up cards slowly, without the explosion he'd imagined. He was being built, not discovered. And nobody outside Miami Beach cared yet. That was the part that pressed against his chest at night. Cassius had expected to announce himself, to make people remember his name after one performance. He'd thought Miami would be where he became undeniable. Instead, it was teaching him to be patient, to win without making noise. His body learned faster than his mind. The restraint started feeling natural in the ring, even when it felt impossible everywhere else. The contradiction lived in him like two people occupying one body. There was the fighter who understood what Dundee was building, who saw the logic in patience. Then there was the other one, the one who'd won Olympic gold by being explosive. That version felt like it was being suffocated. Some nights he'd stand in front of the small mirror in his room, trying to recognize which version was winning. The mirror didn't answer. During one sparring session, a middleweight from Philadelphia caught Cassius with a body shot that folded him at the waist. Not a knockdown, but it hurt. His first instinct was to respond, to show this man what happened when you caught him clean. The combination was already forming. Then he remembered. Box. Stay long. Control distance. He circled away instead, won the rest of the round from the outside. After, the middleweight tapped his glove. "You're learning," he said. Cassius nodded. His ribs would ache for 2 days, but he'd learned he could choose not to respond. That control was a decision you made when every instinct said, do the opposite. The gym's hierarchy shifted without announcement. Sparring partners who'd once gone easy started pressing harder, not to hurt, but to test, to see if the discipline would hold when someone made it personal. Cassius held. The punches came faster and he made them miss. The pressure increased and he didn't break form. The respect that came back wasn't loud. It was in the space older fighters gave him, the nods, the way they'd watch his work and offer nothing, which meant they saw nothing that needed correction. One afternoon, a welterweight named Luis, who'd fought for a regional title, watched Cassius work the speed bag for 3 minutes. Then he walked over to his own bag and started working. That was it. That was the acknowledgement. Cassius understood he'd crossed some invisible line. He wasn't being watched anymore. He was being accepted. The gym absorbed him completely. The sparring sessions became longer, harder, more technical. Men who'd given him 4 rounds now gave him 8, 10. They stopped explaining what they were about to do. They expected him to see it, to adjust, to learn in real time. And when he did, they'd smile. Not with pleasure, with recognition. There were nights when Cassius couldn't sleep. He'd lie on the thin mattress in his rented room, staring at ceiling cracks, feeling the weight of all that unreleased energy. His nature wanted explosion, wanted to show everything at once, make every fight memorable. But the fights here weren't about memory. They were about construction, brick by brick, round by round. Win today, stay unbeaten today, build toward something that didn't have a name yet. He didn't know what he was building toward. He just knew it required this. The patience, the control, the accumulation of victories nobody would remember. Between rounds, Dundee's instructions became predictable, not because they were repetitive, but because Cassius started hearing them before they were spoken. His body knew what it needed. More distance when tired, sharper jabs when the opponent pressed, energy saved for the final minute of each round. He learned to read fatigue in an opponent's shoulders, in the way their feet started landing flat. He learned that knockouts were beautiful, but rounds were currency, and currency accumulated quietly. The relationship with Dundee deepened through brevity. Most trainers talked constantly. Dundee spoke only when silence would cost time. Between rounds, he'd give one instruction, sometimes just a word. Distance. Jab. Circle. And Cassius understood the entire adjustment required. The trust built like sediment, layer by layer, invisible until you tried to move it and realized it was stone. One evening after training, Dundee said without turning, "You're not ready yet." Cassius stopped, waited. "But you're becoming ready." "That's different." He looked at Cassius directly. "Most fighters never understand the difference. Keep doing what you're doing. The readiness will arrive when it arrives." He walked out. Left Cassius standing there, understanding that he'd just received something more valuable than technique, confirmation that the direction was correct. The gym had its own language, unspoken, but clear. Cassius wasn't at the top of the hierarchy, wasn't at the bottom. He occupied the space where potential lived, where men who might become something trained next to men who already were something. Nobody treated him like the kid from Louisville anymore. That shift happened without announcement. One day, the professionals just stopped explaining things. They assumed he understood. And when he didn't, he was expected to learn through repetition, through getting hit, through adjustment. The respect was real, but it was silent, earned in increments too small to name individually. After a fight in late spring, a reporter asked if he thought he could compete at the championship level. Cassius paused. 6 months ago, he would have answered immediately, loudly, with certainty that doubled as performance. Now he said, "I'm learning what that takes." The reporter waited for more. There wasn't more. That was the complete answer. He was learning to win in ways that didn't feed the part of him that wanted love for winning, learning to be effective instead of explosive, controlled instead of chaotic. Some days it felt like betrayal, like he was killing the part of himself that had carried him this far, but another part, quieter, understood. The future required surviving the present, and survival here meant discipline that nobody applauded. The wins accumulated without fanfare, small purses, brief mentions in newspapers that used his name without explaining who he was. Steady upward movement on cards that never made national coverage. Cassius Clay, undefeated. Cassius Clay, untested against real opposition. Cassius Clay, quick but unproven. He read the words and felt the specific distance between what he was and what he needed to become. That distance was measurable now. It wasn't about wanting more. It was about constructing more. One fight, one round, one correct decision under pressure when the instinct was to do something else. Dundee never promised him anything. That was another form of respect Cassius had to learn to recognize. No speeches about destiny, no assurances about greatness, just the next fight, the next opponent, the next problem to solve with his hands and feet and timing. Cassius understood slowly that this meant Dundee believed he could solve the problems, believed he could learn what needed learning, believed he didn't need to be told he was special. The work would prove it or it wouldn't, and the work right now was unglamorous. Controlling distance against forgettable opponents, winning rounds that wouldn't be discussed tomorrow, building a foundation with no audience. Some nights he'd walk the beach after training, shoulders still tight, legs heavy with accumulated fatigue. The ocean moved in the dark with complete indifference. It didn't care about his record, didn't care about his progress or his restraint or the future he was trying to build. It just moved. He found something steadying in that. The world was larger than the ring, larger than his need to be seen, but the ring was where he had to prove something, not to crowds, not yet. To the men in the gym who watched without comment, to Dundee who spoke in sentences that never wasted words, to the version of himself that didn't exist yet, but was being constructed in these small, silent victories that nobody would remember when the larger story was told.